I'm Pastor Ben Schaefer. It won't be long until spring will be here. Along with the tulips and daffodils, we'll soon see the appearance of a nationwide group known as the Travelers, otherwise known to some people as the Gypsies. The purpose of these travelers is to support themselves primarily by helping themselves to your money and goods, usually in the forms of scams. Over the course of our time together today, we want to make you aware of the many scams you may be exposed to and what your legal recourse is should you become a victim. Our show today is entitled Gypsies, Tramps and Thieves. Joining me on the panel today are Fulton County Chief Deputy Sheriff Roy Miller and Fulton County Prosecutor Scott Hazelman. Roy, I've asked you to begin with just a little bit of the background on the Travelers, if you would.
Travelers is known as generations of people that band together. They normally go to the southern states where it's warmer in the winter and continue to do some of their work in that area down there. And then when spring hits up in the north, they start migrating their way back up this way. Most of it's generation of families and cousins together with names and aliases and stuff like that. And when the weather warms back up here in northwest Ohio, you start seeing them floating around, doing barn painting, lightning rods, black topping, stuff like that. And we'll talk a little bit about that here as we go along and talk about scams.
Scott, good to have you with us today too.
Thanks for having me.
Let's begin talking a little bit about some of the transient scams. The scams were primarily perpetrated by these travelers as they come in and try to make their money.
Right. The biggest one that we deal with up here in northwest Ohio, or the two biggest ones, are one is barn painting, obviously, or roof painting. Most of the time they go around out in the country and stop at houses or where big barns are, obviously, and quote them a price pretty reasonable rather than your local painter, to paint your barn. The biggest thing is the complaints that I've heard that once the barn's painted, it only lasts 6 months to a year, or sometimes people jokingly say, the first rain it comes off or whatever have you. I've never seen that happen, but a lot of times what they do is they'll dilute the paint that they're using with water if they use a latex, or they buy it in 55-gallon drums. You'll see it in the back, and they dilute it with water, and it goes a lot farther than, let's say there's 100 gallons. 110 gallons, 55 gallons drums back there. The homeowner or the barn owner thinks that they get billed for 110 gallons. They may have put 20 gallons of water in with it. That's one of our biggest ones that we see come around in the springtime. The other type of transient scam that we see a lot is blacktop. A lot of people like to have a blacktop driveway. They'll come around. Normally there's one truck by themselves. They call it the boss. He has a real nice pickup truck most of the time, and he'll pull in and talk to somebody out in the yard. And most of the time they give the spiel that we're doing some work for the township, or we're doing some work for the county, and we had some blacktop left over and we need to get rid of it. We'll give you it at a cheaper price. Then they quote you a price on it, and most people don't get a written contract, or they don't know enough to ask. How thick is the blacktop? Is it really blacktop? Last year we had somewhere it was just asphalt grindings that they rolled down. Right. There's a lot of things, or they'll get started on it and they'll do half the drive or a quarter of the drive at a certain price. They'll say, I'll give you, for instance, I'll give you 10,000 square feet at this price, and most people don't know how to calculate the whole driveway, so they do 10,000 square feet. Well, that's only half the driveway, or a quarter of your driveway. Of course, you don't want a quarter of your driveway paved, so then after they get what they quoted you done, the price goes up and says, we'll do the rest of it for X amount of money. So,
yeah, one of the keys is, it's the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If someone shows up at your house and gives you a really good deal on materials, or they guarantee their work, you have to consider, guarantee's only as good as the company who's giving the guarantee.
Right.
And if you've never heard of the company, ask for their identification. Call the Better Business Bureau. Look online. People, if they don't have a telephone number in the phone book, or a real address, a real physical address, red flags should start going off when somebody just shows up at your house wanting to sell you something at a great price.
Right. One of the things that I in some of the research that I did indicated that some of these travelers will even get local business licenses.
Yes.
Or become
Yes.
certified, to do contracting work per se.
That is true. Sometimes they'll even use local businesses, for instance, to do some, like blacktopping. Last year, I saw the company was doing a blacktop repair for an individual here in town that owned the business, and then, they'd use them as their reference. They'll go out. Of course, the individual that owned the business was a lot smarter than the people, or the individuals they were dealing with out in, either in the city who wasn't business oriented, so he negotiated for a lot cheaper price at the business here. So, of course, then they get out into the towns or they get out into the country, and then they'll use that business's name. Well, we've done work for a reputable company here in town, so, well, if they did it for him, I can trust you, type thing.
Right.
Now, do they, along with the blacktop, do they get into the sealing part of it too?
They do. Last year, it was grindings that the certain individual group was putting down, and then obviously the homeowner wouldn't be satisfied because it really didn't look like blacktop, because it wasn't as black, it was more of a grayish because it was grindings. So for an extra $400 or $500, we can seal it for you. And again, what I was told by one of the people that I interviewed that used to work with this particular group said that they were using black oil-based paint and diluting it with diesel fuel and spraying it onto the blacktop to make it look black. So.
One of the things you had talked about when we met previously was how they will come in and say something in the yard, a tree or something like that, and then the theft type scams.
Normally they work in pairs, and they'll have two individuals show up at a house, and most of the time they're out driving around or whatever have you, and they'll see a person in the yard picking up sticks or whatever have you, and they pull in, and they represent themselves as a utility company, a pipeline company, or any type of utility company that does work outdoors, and give them the spiel where, well, we're going to do some line work back here, or we're going to put in a gas line. I'm with the utility company. We want to make sure we're not coming onto your property. Could you show me where your property line is out back? So the individual leaves the front of the house, and they take them out back, showing them to the property line, and this guy's got a Motorola two-way, whatever, back and forth, like he's talking to a boss or something, when the reality of it is the guy that was in the truck sitting there is actually inside of the house collecting jewelry or money, or one occasion it was a check that was missing out of the back of a book.
Or potentially personal information for identity theft, which is
Yes,
a big
that's a big thing,
scam
yes.
that
Yep.
this group use.
So, I mean, most people that come to your house, Scott, you probably get this a lot, they should have their identification on them. Again,
Badge.
some type of a badge. Don't be afraid to call the company and confirm, that it's Roy Miller. Does he work for your, Toledo Edison? Does he work for Ohio Gas? Does he, that's the biggest thing that you need to confirm, who these people are before you take them anywhere else, or call your local police agency and have us come out. We'd be glad to check them out for you.
Because these people come to understand that in an area like this, when an individual is outside, they usually don't lock themselves out of their own, they don't lock the door when they go outside at their
Correct.
own house. So when they take you to the back, they're aware that around here, people are likely to have left a door open to enter the house.
Yes. And of course, they've got them busy out back looking at the property line while the other individual is inside the house. So, and then when things start, ending or going towards the house, he's back on the radio and basically letting the partner know that they're on their way back to the house. Well, he's sitting in the truck. You wouldn't think anything had happened in that 5 to 10 minutes. So
Are these people basically non-violent, or can they get violent? Like with a home invasion, perhaps, or if somebody stumbled into them, onto them?
There's always the risk that when a theft is going on, if you stumble into a person, that could spin out of control. I don't know that this group is always per se known as a violent group, but whenever you have thefts going on and people caught in the act, you never know what can happen.
Right. It's kind of like getting a cornered dog or something, most of the time. We've never had any issues with them as being violent like that, you know what I'm saying? Most of the time, before the people know what happened, they didn't get a description or a plate number, or, and they're long gone, before, and a lot of times they'll hang in a certain area only for a matter of days, and then boom, they're, they're out of the area just so, law enforcement can't catch up with them and identify them. And if you do identify them, like I said, there's a lot of fake identification being used, and by the time you get that all worked out, they're long gone. And we try to notify, put out a what we call some type of a broadcast to the local agencies surrounding Fulton County, letting them know that, hey, these guys are back in the area again. This is what's going on, so they're aware of it too, and we can get the word out to protect people.
Because these people are looking to perpetrate these crimes in such a manner as they maximize the bang for the buck. And they get as much money as they can for as little risk and as little effort as possible. That's really the aim.
Correct.
Have you run into much? I was reading that one of the things that they do a lot, at least some of them do, is involved in retail theft. Have you run into that much around this area, or is that?
I personally haven't ran into. I've heard of some groups going around, but I don't know whether they're this particular part of the groups. But there are groups. Because we don't have any major retails out in the county. I know like Waseon Police have like Walmart, stuff like that. And I've known just from the information, that I get every day on email that there are groups and I that go around and do retail rings, what we call them, theft rings. And I do know they've busted up a few of them. Now, whether they're part of this group or part of any group from any, I don't know. But there are groups that do that.
Right. They work as teams, with lookouts and people who distract the security or distract the employees while someone else is pocketing the goods. So it's a sophisticated operation at times.
Yeah. Again, I might just mention, we're talking about these things today to make you aware at home so that you can be safe and so you don't have to worry about this type of scam. If somebody comes along and tries to scam you in any way, you can be aware of it and won't become a victim. So.
Right, and the one thing people have to be aware of in a situation like Deputy Miller indicated, with someone showing up at your house with the offer of asphalt that's too good to be true, the key is they'll use pressure tactics. A lot of pressure tactics is a big thing. This deal is only good today. And if a reputable company, there's no such thing as a deal that's only good today. You have to act right now. That's just not how they work.
Yeah,
correct.
Anything else as far as the transient scams you think we should cover?
We have had some cases of lightning rod scams, is what we call it, where they primarily they deal with mostly the elderly. Again, I think they've been in the area before, and I think once they get your name or they do paint your barn, they keep track of that, and I think they may pass that on to somebody else down the line, and then maybe 2 years I come back, well, Roy Miller painted your barn. Oh, well, he must be pretty, whatever, reputable. Or, but a lot of times they'll find, again, elderly people, because farms and barns are important to the wife. Let's say she's widowed, that's part of the heritage, and she wants to preserve it. And they make a big scene out of how you're missing lightning rods. If lightning rods would strike that barn, it'd burn it down. You certainly don't want that to happen to you. Of course I don't. So they'll go up and they'll do a minimal amount of work, if any. Going up like they're going to replace wire or rods, and then they come back down. Maybe a half hour, 45 minutes later, and give you a check or give you a receipt and say, I want $1,800. They don't give you a receipt. They'll never give you a receipt. But and then let me tell you, that cash is going to be checked that check will be cashed within about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, by the time they figure out nothing happened up there on the roof.
Right. Because the other key is, don't prepay. When someone shows up at your house like that, clearly do not prepay them for the work. A reputable company, again, will, you have a written contract, and maybe it'd be a portion up front, but there's always a portion that gets paid at the end.
Right. Yep. And it's high enough up. I mean, older people, obviously, they're not going to crawl up on that roof and take a look and see if anything was done. They're just taking their word for it. That's probably been about 3 years ago that we've dealt with that. We haven't had it lately, but I expect that it'll be back. If it works, they're going to use it.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think you're probably right about them passing the word along who gets suckered into these scams and who doesn't.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like the old thing when we used to have the hobos around. If you fed them or you allowed them to stay, there was a mark on your property someplace, so that the next group coming through knew that the home was agreeable. To helping them, and so now let's look at then a little bit at internet schemes.
Okay.
What,
The biggest ones that we've been dealing with seem to be like you'll get like the lot. We call it the lottery scam. You know, you'll get some type of an email saying that, or you inherited a large sum of money, and all you need to do is pay the taxes for us to clear this, to get it over to you. You know, send us $300 and in a money order type thing, and people do it. Send the $300 over, then they get another, you know, now they got you started, you know, oh, I'm sorry, we ran into more problems, send us another $500. The amounts seem to go a little up as they go along, until they realize, you know, they're out $1,000 and probably aren't going to get their lottery or inheritance money.
Right. I mean, any time you're told you win the lottery, there should not be any payment by you.
Right.
At that point.
If you win
something, there's no payment for winning.
The only thing it cost you it would have been the ticket, you know.
Right.
And first of all, you probably didn't enter the lottery or whatever lottery they're talking about.
Right.
But you know, greed does weird things. I mean, to people, even though in their own mind they think something's not right. But you know, if you're down, especially with the economy the way that it's been, you know, you're down behind on house payment maybe, or trying to get a kid to college. You know, you look at it as a chance to. You know, to better yourself and your kids' education possibly, or get caught up on some payments, and it just, you know, so those seem to be a lot of them. The other things that we handle, like that, the lottery scams, the inheritance stuff, we seem to get a lot of work-at-home scams. And this is a scam where basically, you know, they post it online telling you what they need, and then people reply, well, you'll need this, this, and this in order to work for me. Well, they don't have it, so what they'll do is they'll front you the money to go buy that stuff. So they front you the money up front to go purchase some of this equipment that they need, and then they find out, well, the equipment really didn't cost that much. Oh, then they email them back, oh, I'm so sorry, well, just deposit it into your bank, the rest of the check into your bank, and then, you know, wire me, send me a money order, send me the money order for the difference that I overpaid you. Unfortunately, the check that the victim had received wasn't, you know, wasn't any good at all. And by the time it clears, you know, the bank and they find out, they've already drew money because they thought they had it out of their account, and then they're held accountable for it.
Right.
So,
in a similar, well, it's different to the extent that most internet scams are designed to be quick. They get in, they get out. But there's a tendency now with the social networking that's online nowadays, dating sites, things of that nature, that there's developing a different type of scam, which is a long-range scam, where you'll develop an online relationship with someone who's actually developing an online relationship with 100 people. And you get to know that person, you think you get to know that person over a period of time, then, you know, weeks or months into it, all of a sudden there's a family emergency, they need you to send them some money, you know, it's either a sickness or a financial crisis, and you send money, and next thing you know, this person is gone. And there's not just one person, but they are angling out to get as many people involved in that as they can. So you have to be careful on the social websites or social networking sites you use. Make sure they're reputable. You may want to get the person's name who you're dealing with, and put their name in and see how many times it shows up. Or is there multiple people with the same interests? Is it, you know, just a fake name for the same person who's doing it, not just for you and, you know, 10 people under name A, but same person using name B with the same interests, same, you know, music tastes, things like that. So you got to watch that.
I think it was not too long ago that I think it was either 2020 or Dateline. One of those ran actually 2 or 3 exposés on people that, and usually it was I guess it was probably equal male and female. Lonely people who were on Facebook or whatever social networking site it was, and they would develop this relationship with this person, a lot of times overseas, and the person they would actually end up sending these people, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars of merchandise.
Right.
And usually that had to do with identity theft.
correct.
They were the person that they were in contact with over the social networking site would give them, say, okay, I can't buy this here, you can buy it there, here's the card to use, card number to use, and so on, and or use your own card and we'll reimburse you, and end up losing thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yep. Yeah, another one of the work-at-home scams was I worked with a young lady who had some children. So, of course, working at home, being with your children was lucrative to her. One of the local PDs from out of state called and said it was an address out in the county, and they had a lady that had reported her credit card number was stolen and being used, and it was going, and the packages were getting shipped to an address here in our county. So when I went out there and interviewed the young lady, what had happened was she applied for an online work at home, and what they were doing was they were giving her the scan, but it was getting shipped to her because it was, and then she was supposed to repackage it and put these labels on it and ship it somewhere else because it was cheaper than UPS or whatever, breaking the box up. Well, she didn't know any different, and here she was receiving all these stolen goods from somebody else that was using the stolen credit card number. She would repackage it and put these labels on that were pre-printed, and then they'd ship them off to another country or wherever have you, and this had went on for about 3 to 4 weeks before, she finally realized that, that something was going on, and then we got a call that, hey, there's somebody in your jurisdiction that's receiving items with a stolen credit card number. But
yeah, I knew of one individual that it was a work-at-home scheme making jewelry, and you had to buy the material from this company.
Okay.
And then you'd make the jewelry according to their directions, and then send it into them, and they promised to pay you for it.
Right.
Where the problem came in is if it wasn't absolutely perfect, or even if it was, they would say there was a problem with it and wouldn't pay you.
Oh my.
And wouldn't send it back so you could redo it either.
Right.
So just different things like that.
Oh, there's, yeah.
People are ingenious in the methods they come up with to try to get your money.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
I run into, I wish I had $1 for every version of the Nigerian scheme that crosses my my spam filter every day.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, I get probably 10 or 15 of them a day.
Yep.
And it's interesting because we were talking earlier. I actually knew a fellow that got sucked in on that one time, and that was actually when they were doing it by mail rather than the internet. He actually went over to Nigeria with about $25,000 for bribe money, and he was supposed to get I think it was over $1 million, and the only thing he got was he actually made 2 trips over there and ended up having his life threatened and losing what he brought over. So plus the cost of the trip and that. So like Scott said earlier, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
What other kind of phone scams do you run into, Roy?
The biggest one that we're having right now is, we call it the grandson in jail scam, or Missy got in a bad accident and she's in another country and they don't accept their insurance and they need money right away to perform some surgery on her or whatever have you. Through social networking, obviously, let's use Facebook as an example. I mean, anymore you can put Sally wants you to confirm that you're her nephew or grandson or whatever have you. So you can get to that. These guys, if it's open to the public, they can find that information out. Well, now they know that
Because it'll say right on the website, visiting Toronto.
Right.
And people don't think anything about that, but if your site is open to the public, or they've wrangled their way into your friends somehow, they know that you're not in the country. They know who your grandparents are, your family members are, because you've listed them
on your website.
And
So-
next thing you know, they have the 2 key ingredients to performing this scam.
Right. And basically what they'll do is, the one we just had here recently, about a week ago, they'll call, and I'm not sure, I think this one might have been out of Canada. Not quite sure where it was, but anyways, what they'll do is they'll call grandpa up or grandma up and say, hey, this is Johnny. Or this is a local police department. We've got Johnny incarcerated for a minor offense up here. He had a possession of marijuana or something simple. He's all scared and doesn't want dad and mom to find out about. We've got a $2,500 bond on him. He'd like you to wire the money right away. So obviously, the first thing they do is, a week and a half ago, the gentleman tried calling his grandson and didn't get an answer. So that even made it worse, because most of the time during the day you can't get a hold of people. They're at work or whatever have you, and he didn't know that he wasn't out of the state or out of the country, and so he went ahead and wired the money to this place, this bondsman, wherever it was at, and then about 3:30, quarter to 4, he gets a call from his grandson saying, "Grandpa, I see you called me. What do you need? Are you in Toronto? Are you in Mexico? Are you in?" No, I was at work today. And here they had already sent the $2,500 again through MoneyGram or Western Union. I mean, if they're trying to get you to wire money, that should be a red flag. And not only used to be out of the country, we would tell them if they want you to mail it to Nigeria or out of the country or Canada. Those should be red flags, but anymore you got to watch. Even in the United States, they'll like these checks that come. The addresses are different. You got multiple addresses. That should be a red flag.
Right.
They want you. If it's truly Roy Miller that's trying to get the money from you, shouldn't you send the money order to Roy Miller? But they make you put a different name on it, like Scott Hazelman, and then mail it to California. And it's like they spread you out real thin. So.
Yeah, there's some really strange things going on with things like that. I mean, that's you have to really be careful.
Correct.
Really be
Correct.
careful. I think for those of you who are on social networking, which is an awful lot of people anymore,
Yes.
one of the things you have to remember is that you can keep your site fairly private. And the more private you keep it, in other words, don't let anybody have general access to the information on your site unless it's somebody that you really know. Because that's where we run into a problem. My church has a mentoring group, and we ran into a situation just a few weeks ago where my coordinator has access to pretty much the Facebook sites of all the kids. And she found out that this one 12-year-old was putting on her Facebook page that she was in high school, that she was having sex, and that she could pretty much come and go whenever she pleased. And so we found that out, and we got Agent Norton from the Sheriff's Department in, and clued her in on what was going on, and she came in ostensibly to talk about cyber stalking, cyberbullying. And she got into her presentation a little ways, and she looks at this 12-year-old girl, and she says, "Aren't you so-and-so?" "Yeah." She said, and Alex just said, "I've been watching your site. You've been watching your page, and I don't like what's on it." And she flat out asked her, "Are you in high school?" "No." "Are you having sex?" "No." "Are you able to come and go any hours of the day and night?" "No." She said, "I want that off there tonight."
Right.
And it was off. But the thing is that stuff should be private.
Yes.
Where only your close friends, people that you know, close friends and family, have access to it.
Correct.
That's going to eliminate a lot of the problem right there.
Yeah, people have a tendency, things that information that if someone took from them, they'd be very upset.
Yeah.
In the anonymous world of the internet, they give away for free.
Right.
And that's a very dangerous thing.
It's like the example you used with a grandson, granddaughter scheme. If that information was private, these people wouldn't be able to get a hold of that.
Right.
And so we could eliminate a lot of the problem. What are the kind of scams you're running into, Roy?
On the phone, as far as the phone goes, you'll get people who are pretending to be banks, a representative of a bank, and they'll call you up and say, "Mr. Miller, I'm from so-and-so bank. We had a little security issue with it. We need to verify some information with you." They'll ask you your your account number and stuff like that. And people give it to them. And, then they have access to your accounts, and next thing you know, you look at your statement, or you go online and look at your statement, and you find out that you got money missing. So, we always tell people, if it's truly a bank and it's your bank, they know your information. Don't give out any of that information over the phone. Go call your bank directly, or go up and see them in person and ask them. 9 times out of, probably more than that, but out of 10 that, no, we didn't call you, we wouldn't be doing that over the phone.
And they will get very pushy with that too. My mother's been gone a couple of years now, but she actually got taken in with one of those one time. And my sister had power of attorney, and was taking care of her checking account, and the person called and said they needed her account number, and when she told them that my sister had, was in charge of that, she said, well, isn't your name on the account? You got charge of it, and talked her into giving them the number, and fortunately, the bank was very good about it and got it all straightened out.
Right. The key is, if someone calls you, don't ever give them your information over the phone. Right. If you have a valid bank number, you banked at a local bank forever, and you call them and you know who you're dealing with, that's one thing. But if someone calls you, the red flags have got to be going off. And the other thing you may see is, going back to the security breach. We have a teller we think may be, skimming the money.
Yep.
If you withdraw some money from them and drop it off here, we'll check this, the numbers on the bills, and the moment you do that, that money's gone.
Right.
Yep.
And it isn't just the phone things with that. I've had numbers of emails from eBay or PayPal or even actually from my bank asking me for information. And if you click on, I'll guarantee you, if you click onto their link, it will be identical, or at least appear identical to the actual website.
Yes.
But there's something in it that it will go someplace else.
Correct.
And so if you have your bank or someone contacts you and says, well, there's a problem with your account or we need you need to update your password, go into the site that is clear.
Correct.
Go into the actual site. I mean, for like PayPal, for example, log out of that and go directly into your PayPal account and log in. And a lot of times you won't have a problem. Right. It'll be that they're trying to rip you off.
Right. Yeah, that's a good thought, because you do have, like you said, you mentioned eBay or Craigslist or anything. When people go to those sites, you should take the time. I know Craigslist has a tab up there about warnings on scams and stuff like that. You should take the time to click on that tab and read through that.
Right.
I've known a lot of people, good people, that have been taken off of eBay or Craigslist or however you through that. Most of them involved a larger purchase like an automobile that really never existed. They want a down payment for shipping or whatever have you, and the next thing you know, after that happens, you don't have any further email. But automobile purchases seem to be the bigger one that we run into. But
anything else about scams that you think we should cover?
I think that's probably about it.
Right.
Well, let's get into another area than the area of identity theft. I know we've hinted at it a little bit, but not dealt with it directly. So let's talk a little bit about identity theft.
Okay.
The key about identity theft is personal information is precious in today's society. I mean, you can't open bank accounts with social security numbers. I mean, that information is needed to function in modern day society. Social security numbers, PIN numbers, mother's maiden names, addresses, telephone numbers, obviously credit card numbers. These are things that are very important and can be used, by scam artists to take people for a significant amount of money. That they obtain this information by various ways. Sometimes it's just they steal your purse, they have your information. Sometimes it's they call on the phone, pretending to be a bank, over the internet. Sometimes they direct you to a false site. Other times it's you're at the ATM machine and someone just looks over your shoulder as you push the PIN numbers. And there's things you can't leave receipts behind at gas stations.
Right.
You can't leave them on the table at the restaurant. Your yellow copies. You should take that information, check them with your credit card statement every month to make sure there's no unauthorized credit card charges on there. If there is, you should call the sheriff immediately, your bank immediately, and get the ball rolling with the credit companies that monitor people's credit. That's really, you got to protect that information, because people will also throw that stuff away in the garbage. And for a scam artist, all they have to do is go down the street on garbage day and just go through a couple pieces of garbage, find a receipt that has too much information on it or a bill that has too much information on it, and they're off and running.
And if it's a bill, it has your account number on it.
Right.
That's why you have to shred that information, burn it, things like that. I mean, shredders are relatively cheap nowadays, and people are always looking for a way to get that information from you.
Right. What should someone do? What are the steps, Scott, from a legal standpoint, that a person should do if they find out that their identity's been stolen?
Right. Well, obviously, the first thing is call law enforcement. You should also call your bank, and there's 3, major companies that watch people's credit.
Right.
And if you call them, they can put watches on your credit if someone tries to open a credit card account in your name, or a bank account in your name, and they can also provide you with information. Okay, here's where you are listed as having bank accounts. Maybe those are all yours, maybe they are not. But the key is to try to get that information. Take the police report you get from the sheriff's department or the local police department. Keep that information all in a file, because you are going to need that, because you don't fix your credit overnight.
Right.
And the other thing is, there's a scam associated with this. People will call you and say, hey, we see your credit is screwed up. We will fix your credit for $100. Okay, it takes time. It takes time for that kind of thing to work its way through, and to have all that information expunged from your record. But the key is you have to act as soon as you can to get the police involved, because let's say it goes through the mail. They'll call the United States Postal Inspectors. Or maybe it's a federal issue. Maybe this is a much larger deal than you would think, and maybe they've got a federal investigation going. The key is to go to the authorities as soon as you can. Go to your bank as soon as you can, because if your bank is reputable, there may be things they can do to help either get your money back, depending on what happened, but at least prevent more money from being lost.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think they suggest, most of the seminars or places you go, when he was talking about doing credit checks with Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, you should probably do those at least once a year anyways.
Right.
And when you do those credit checks, you'll, like Scott says, you'll find, if anybody's opened up anything in your name, and it puts a red flag on it. If another credit card is trying to be opened, they'll contact you, and and say, hey, just so you know, are you trying to open a Visa card in the last date? No. Okay.
Because the other thing people sometimes do is get the pre-approved credit card application in the mail. You just don't want to throw that in the garbage, because an address change later, and a credit card in your name is now being used by somebody else.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I think some of the credit card companies are being more conscious and more guarded about this. So, in fact, I had a friend not a year or so ago that was on a trip, and the credit card flagged his account. It wouldn't allow him to charge until he called in and got it straightened out, because it was out of his usual pattern. And so, sometimes you may, if you're going to be doing something out of the ordinary, you may want to contact your credit card company and let them know.
Yes. Yes.
And I know that
again, make sure you're talking to the right person. Right.
Probably inconvenient, but that was designed for his own protection. I mean,
Definitely.
And a lot of times we deal with people that sell credit card numbers. I don't know if you've ever, I've gotten a call from my own credit card company, say, hey, we're going to issue you, sending out new cards, got a letter, your account's been jeopardized because somebody hacked into our system type thing, before they know that happens, or any place that does credit cards, those numbers are available, and some people do sell them, and they have machines that are available, that they can put names on them. They'll do it right out in the van, put the names on it, put the numbers on it, and make a card right there. So when you swipe that card, it still shows that it's good, and on the card it says, even though it's not my number, but it says Roy Miller on it, so when they ask me for ID, you hand them, the ID, well, then they get away with it. So there is a lot of that going on. We've dealt with one in Florida, a local lady here, and we even have video of the person down there doing it, but it's in Florida, and we've contacted them, and it's not uncommon down there for that to happen, and most of the time they go out into a van, they'll come in and buy something simple, just to make sure it works. Next thing you know, then they come in and buy a few groceries, and oh, by the way, I want to add a couple $100 gift cards on there for my nephew's birthday, So most credit card companies are pretty good with working with people, victims on that, and getting their money back to them, and as long as you file the proper reports and stuff like that. So.
The key is not to dawdle. You have to get to the credit card company as soon as you can.
Yeah. Have you run into any, I know, I hear all the time about these devices that they can put over, over the reader on an ATM, and some other machines where they can, pick up the card numbers and the PIN numbers. Have you run into any of that locally or not?
We haven't ran into any of it locally, but I've heard about it. And it's almost kind of the same thing. They call it as a skimmer or skimming, is what I think they're doing it. And apparently there's a reader out there that's available now to some of these criminals that if they get close enough to you, allegedly, they can pick up something off your credit card and have your number transferred from here to there.
That's why you see these Luma wallets.
There you go.
They supposedly can't pick it up through that, but I don't.
Pretty uncomfortable, but so we haven't dealt with any of that out here. But I'm sure your probably populated areas, your bigger areas probably have, but personally out here, no. So
I know we've talked some about tips on avoiding being scammed and what are some other things that you think of that we haven't talked about, ways to keep ourselves safe financially and physically,
Right. I mean, the key is, number one, with the computer, protect your information. People pay a lot of bills online nowadays. They transfer a lot of information online nowadays. You got to make sure you're using a secure, encrypted site.
Yes.
That's thing number one in the internet age. And number two is you can't take that same information and just throw it in the garbage, because people know where to look and they know what they're looking for. Don't put don't put Social Security numbers on checks, because now if they have your check, they also have the Social Security number. For example, if you get mail at a mailbox, like most people do on a rural route, get it out of there as soon as you can, because that has your information. If you're mailing something out and it's important, take it to the post office and put it in one of their big boxes that are secure. You got to protect your information. That's really, in the modern day age, one of the main ways that people scam you and end up making their money.
The other thing I'd mention, just to add a little bit to what Scott said, is changing your password. I know it's a hassle because everything's got passwords, but if you continuously change them every 2 to 3 months, I think that'll help out quite a bit too.
Right, and the other thing is you don't want to use the same password multiple places. You should have one password for each account.
Yeah.
And whatever system you devise to keep track of those, you don't want to carry that information with you, and you don't want to leave it by your computer, but you got to keep that information in a secure place. But you got to change it regularly, and you don't want to use it in multiple locations. Because if I'm using a PIN number for something that's, let's say, relatively unimportant, but I use the same PIN number that I would never let somebody else know for a bank account, that information can get out and get used.
One thing we haven't really talked about, but I think it's critical as well, and that is we see a rash of home break-ins, cars broken into. I mean, that goes on all the time. I know one of the things you had mentioned a couple months ago, I think when we were talking, was if a person buys a TV or makes a major purchase like that, TV, computer, don't put the box out to the curb.
Yeah, correct.
If you have to put it out there, cut it up so that it can't be, or take it into recycling. So it's not obvious that you just bought a new TV or a major purchase.
Cut it up and put it in a bag.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Same way with newspapers, or if you're going on vacation, or we can go into that on another time. But how many times have you drive by and you see mail sticking out of the boxes because they forgot to stop it, or the blade laying in the driveway.
Right.
So be sure you call the post office and let them know that you're going to be gone. Stop your mail until you get back. Call the blade, and hopefully they'll take care of that, or your local newspaper.
And in the winter months, if it snows, arrange for somebody to blow your driveway.
Right.
Yep. That's one of the obviously telltale signs. We've had a snow, and snow remains on the ground for a number of days, and if there's no traffic in and out of the house, it's a good sign that no one's there.
Yeah. Right. Anything else that people need to be aware of?
The key is just try to be aware.
Right.
Try to be aware, and always think to yourself, if it's too good to be true, it's not usually is. It always is.
Right. Are we going to go over? You want to go over some tips on? I can give you some phone numbers for people.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
I know phone calls a lot of times.
And we're going to try and have these on the screen as well. So
Okay. It's called the Do Not Call Registry. They do have a website you can go to, but I'm just going to give you, this is for people that get annoying phone calls all the time, or salesmen or whatever have you. It's 1-888-382-1212. You can call there and you can put your phone number in there, and it's a Do Not Call Registry, and you should probably do that about once a year or two. It takes about 30 days, they tell me, to actually work. So that's, you know.
yeah, I just checked went in the other day and checked mine to make sure that they were still there. And
Okay.
They are. And
Good. And then unwanted mail, that's another thing that once you make a donation to any type of a charity,
Yeah.
you should probably check and make sure that it's a reputable charity, because if you want to feed somebody in another country for $5, as soon as you send that,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they sell that your information, and you just start getting loaded with mail. So if you start getting unwanted mail, we'll post the website here. I'll give it to you after we're done. But the phone number to slow down some of that unwanted mail is 217-768-7277, extension 1500, and that will get you, where you can sign up and start stopping some of that unwanted mail. Basically, some of the stuff we've went over, never give out your personal information over the phone, mail, or people going door to door. As Scott says, if it sounds too true to be good, it is. I mean, that's and you can always call your local sheriff's department or police department. They're always willing to answer. We'd rather do the preventive thing than following
Right.
up with you and find out that you've lost thousands of dollars. So, if you have any questions at all about it, you're not going to bother anybody. You're not going to bother us. You're not going to any police department. Just call and ask, and what they think about it, or they'll go online and look it up for you.
Because it really is a cliche, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes.
Oh, definitely,
Yes.
Without a doubt.
absolutely.
The other one, Scott and I mentioned earlier, if the deal's too good today, if the deal's so good today, it'll be there tomorrow. Don't be rushed. Don't be pushed into by a smooth talker. Don't make a decision today. Again, if you've won any type of a prize or lottery, it shouldn't cost you anything to get it. That's our other thing. So those are just some basic things that we tell people to try to avoid some of these scams. So.
We hope our time together today has been beneficial to you. Our goal is to keep you safe. If you're aware of a scam going on or have been the victim of a scam yourself, please do not hesitate to call the Fulton County Sheriff's Department or your local police department. I want to say a special thank you to Chief Deputy Roy Miller and Fulton County Prosecutor Scott Hazelman for being with us today, and also a special thanks to Angie Shirey and INTV for making this and programs like it possible. There have been many requests for repeats of our Keep Our Children Safe program, the program we did a few months ago on sex trafficking and child safety. If you did not see it or would like to see it again, it is available for viewing at your convenience on YouTube. The web address is www.youtube.com/user/INTVWasion5, all one word, and then scroll down to Keep Our Children Safe. For Roy Miller and Scott Hazelman, I'm Pastor Ben Schaefer. Thank you for watching and have a great day.